Auckland FC's maiden A-League campaign has come to an end, suffering a second league semi-final defeat to Melbourne Victory, ending their first season in the A-League. This is despite them winning the Premier's Plate, and many people had them now to go on and win the whole A-League competition, and unfortunately that came to an end last Saturday evening, as I said, in that second leg in Auckland. But despite that, it caps off a very impressive season from the A-League's newest team, who of course, as I said, won the regular season Premier's Plate, and unfortunately that would be all they would win this season, but very much surprising many who thought maybe they'd be sort of like a mid-table team. But we're going to review their season here today, as I'm Nick from Nickn'detail, and today I'm going to be reviewing Auckland FC's 2024-25 A-League season, which of course came to an end last Saturday evening. So let's get into it. That's right, when Auckland FC was announced into the A-League for this season towards the end of last season, there were kind of sort of mixed opinions of how they would go. I think some people thought, okay, Bill Foley, a billionaire, lots of money, but also you look at the minority owners they have as well, who've also got quite a bit of money. You thought maybe Auckland FC are really going to be challenging for titles, particularly when we saw Bill Foley's, expectation and ambition for Auckland FC. I think people thought, well, maybe this could be an Auckland FC team that can challenge for the title in their first A-League season. But I think many others, including myself, thought, okay, this is a new team in the A-League. Maybe they'll push for finals, and maybe if not, maybe just under the finals in that first season. Still not a bad way to start, life in the A-League. But Auckland FC very much proved a lot of critics wrong, especially myself. They ended up winning the entire A-League regular season Premier's Plate by 5 points, finishing with 18 wins, 8 draws, and 3 defeats, with 48 goals for and 27 against, 5 points clear of Melbourne City, who of course are in the grand final of the A-League this weekend against Melbourne Victory. But Auckland FC, despite that, very much surprising many, and of course that Premier's Plate, very much getting what Auckland FC very much have deserved right from that first whistle of their maiden A-League game. So let's get to what my thoughts were on Auckland FC's season. Yes, I know they'll be heavily disappointed that they did not go win the whole A-League competition, because very much from how the season went, a lot of people were expecting them to even go into that final and win the whole A-League. What a story that would be. No team's actually ever won the A-League in their maiden season. I think the closest a team's got is Western United in their second season in the A-League won the A-League. So Auckland FC still very much have time to get to that record held by Western United, who of course finished in the top 6 this season and made it to the elimination final. In fact, actually to the semi-finals, I should say, rather. Of course they lost to Melbourne City. But yeah, Auckland FC very much, surprising a lot of people this season. I don't think many expected them to be able to challenge for the A-League title. But right from that first game against the Brisbane Roar, it looked pretty clear that Auckland FC were here to mean business. And you actually got to give credit to the recruitment team, the team signing players for this season. And very much the whole, central point of this Auckland FC team was to make it majority Kiwi. And that's what you got to credit Auckland FC for. About 80% of this team were very much New Zealanders. And this is great that we're seeing an A-League team very much look to New Zealanders. I mean, you look at the Phoenix, for example, they don't really have a whole lot of Kiwis, although as of late, they are starting to recruit more local players. But Auckland FC, right from the get-go, making their ambition clear, they want to sign New Zealand players and therefore be able to develop them in the A-League and then send them overseas, which of course we've seen a few Kiwis do over the last few years, going to Europe or also to the US. But yeah, Auckland FC's recruitment was very impressive in the off-season. The players they signed were quite impressive, and you thought with that roster building and of course signing Steve Corica, the ex-Sydney FC coach, winning a few premierships with Sydney FC during his time over there, you thought, wow, this Auckland FC team is really shaping up nicely. But I think past that, there really wasn't that expectation to go on and do well being a new team. Yeah, they certainly did shut that down pretty quickly with their impressive season. You could argue, yes, their first 7 games of the season, they only had to make the one trip to Australia, and what was described by Phoenix coach Giancarlo Italiano as a lucky draw. And to be honest, you could argue for that it very much was, I guess, a lucky draw that they didn't have to go to Australia more than once or even a couple times. Usually in that period, an average team would go, as in New Zealand, probably have a couple games already over in Australia. But Auckland FC, very much credit to them, made the most of that, as you should when given that opportunity, and they certainly showed that. And of course, had it led a New Zealand 1-2 at the top of the table at one point, and very much unlike the Phoenix, were actually able to keep that consistency going for the whole season. And yes, they may have had a few little patches here and there where they looked a little bit shaky, but I'd say about 90, even 95% of the season, Auckland FC were always consistent. Whether it was picking up a draw or wins, they were still picking up points, and that is how a team fighting for the top of the table needs to perform. And Auckland FC certainly showed that, very much proving to everyone that yes, you may have a billionaire running your team, and yes, it does help when you've got so much, even though of course you've got a cost cap in the league as well as there is of any sports, but at the same time, you've got to make most of the squad you have. But also it's up to the players as well to actually go on and perform under that pressure. And Auckland FC certainly did. And they became, shall we say, a team that wasn't very much liked. No one expected the new boys on the block to come in and do well. And they certainly were able to, withstand that pressure and put on a very impressive regular season. And yeah, for Auckland FC, I think a very decent season for them. The Premiers play in their first season. No other team has very much done that in their maiden A-League season. So, very much credit to Auckland FC. And as I said, it just shows, yes, you've got so much money, you can do what you like with it under a cost cap, of course, but you've got to perform under that pressure. And Auckland FC certainly showed that. So who was my star player for Auckland FC this season? Well, I'm actually going to give my MVP for the season to Guillermo Mai. Now, if you remember in my preview video for Auckland FC for this season, I actually said Guillermo Mai would be the biggest flop. I didn't really think an import striker, to be honest, any import striker coming into the A-League never really works out. Just for some reason, these import strikers don't really seem to adjust to A-League football. They don't really seem to get into gear, shall we say. But Guillermo Mai very much showed that he is a top quality striker. He had a great performance for Auckland FC this season. In fact, won the Auckland FC's MVP Player of the Year and finished fourth in the Johnny Warren medal standings, which of course is the big end of very much the MVP of the A-League towards the end of the season there. So managed to get in that top half and very much near, I guess, a few places off the top Johnny Warren medal spot. So very much showing what a great performance the Uruguayan striker had Auckland FC this season, but he was just very consistent, scored goals, getting assists, but just being a handful for defenders in the box, but also outside the box as well. This was a great showing this season from Guillermo Mai, and of course we do know, well, Auckland FC are trying to get him on contract for next season. In fact, that's pretty much been confirmed. It's just waiting for the official announcement, of course, very much triggering that extra year on Guillermo Mai's contract for him to stay at Auckland FC in the A-League for the 2025-26 season, and I think this is a great move for Auckland FC. He was very much a standout player, and very much looking forward to seeing what he can do next season, what should be a very much unchanged Auckland FC team, which of course I'll get to later in the video. But Guillermo Mai is my star player for Auckland FC this season. What a great performance from the Uruguayan, very much proving me wrong that he's not a big flop, and a great showing this season from the Uruguay striker. So he is my star player for Auckland FC for this A-League season. So what's next for Auckland FC? Well, not a whole lot, to be honest. Unlike the Phoenix, who are completely clearing out this team, Auckland FC are expected to remain very much unchanged. We do know, announced yesterday officially, Gator Moreno is leaving Auckland FC. That really came as no surprise. There was kind of chats a few months ago that he was kind of not really settling in to living in the Auckland city, and very much that move confirmed yesterday that he will not be renewing his contract with the Black Knights, and he is leaving. Another one who is leaving is Alex Poulsen. Now, this guy actually signed, of course, on loan from Bournemouth this season, having, of course, been a standout player for the Phoenix last season. And I think a lot of people didn't really see that Auckland FC move happening until that clause that very much stopped clubs from loaning those players out to A-League clubs who would just come from an A-League club from happening. But, of course, Auckland FC were able to get that clause removed to be able to sign Poulsen for this season, but he, of course, is going back to Bournemouth, where he's expected to once again go back out on loan next season, likely to the Scottish Premiership with another Bill Foley owned club. So this is expected to bring Michael Wood into the first choice position. Of course, signed as one of the first Auckland FC signings for this A-League campaign, but very much since Poulsen's arrival, didn't even play a single minute this season, Michael Wood, and is expected to take that #1 shirt this season. And Auckland FC have reportedly signed young Kiwi goalkeeper Scott Dennis from Stoke City. He plays in the Premier League under-21 league for Stoke City, and even though that hasn't been confirmed, that move's very much done. He's expected to be #2 for Auckland FC this season. Max Mata also set to go back to League One side in England, Shrewsbury Town. That was only a loan move, even though there was a bit of chat and whisper that he was going to stay at Auckland FC and make it a permanent, but that now looks set to be off the table. Max Mata is going back to England, but very much those are the really only few changes in this Auckland FC team next season. And of course, with Moreno's visa spot freed up, be interesting to see who Auckland FC go for to replace him, whether they look to bring in some more attacking options, more defensive options. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that free visa spot. We know Tommy Smith is expected to also have his contract renewed, or that extra year on his contract extended, of course, as part of his contract agreements. That will be interesting to see what happens there. And of course, as I said earlier, with Julian Momai, they're expected to also initiate that extra year on the Uruguayan's contract, so for him to stay in Auckland for next season. So very much not many changes in this Auckland FC team next season, and very much, credit to Auckland FC. They're able to very much sign pretty much all their signings by a couple on multi-year deals or longer. The only ones I think also off contract, Logan Rogerson, but apparently that's very much going to be a priority for Auckland FC to re-sign him. And of course, he's already made it clear he wants to stay in Auckland next season. And also Louis Toomey as well as off contract, and of course only played a few games for Auckland this season, but I think he actually had some decent performances when he played for Auckland, so I think don't be surprised if he also re-signs for the club next season. So that's going to be it for me. A great season for Auckland FC. Yes, they'll be absolutely gutted. They did not win the whole A-League competition, but to win the regular season, to win the Premier's Plate, to even top the table in your maiden season is very impressive. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do next season, even though, of course, realistically, they won't be making a whole heap of changes. I would think. I'm looking forward to seeing how the side will move into season 2, particularly, of course, with Michael Wood now expected to take that #1 shirt, how he'll perform, having, of course, sat on the bench all season behind Alex Poulsen, with him, of course, going back to Europe and expected to go out on loan to the Scottish Premiership. Also interesting to see how, once again, these younger players continue to evolve as well. We saw a few of them get some minutes this season, the likes of Jonty Bidwa, Adama Kulabai, and of course Liam Gillian also getting some minutes. It'll be interesting to see how those guys step up into once again this environment again next season. Of course, they were given, I will say, a relatively decent amount of minutes. Particularly Liam Gillian, who we saw start the first bit of the season, then drop off halfway through, and then come back towards the end. How his role will evolve at Auckland FC's team next season, and particularly with Nathan Moreno, of course, now leaving, if his role will step up. That'll be interesting to see what will happen there. But for Auckland FC, very promising signs for what should be a very decent second season for them. And yes, once again, it should be interesting to see how they'll evolve into season 2 as a professional football outfit. But that's going to be it from me, and until next time, I'll see you later.